We're back for another episode of Stuck in My Thoughts. As always, I'm your host, Justin Stuckey, and I'm joined here today with the legendary Jay Bilas. Appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you, Justin. It's great to be with you.
You were the quickest turnaround in Stuck in My Thoughts history. Got the text this morning that you were down to do it, and we had to get the dice rolling there. We're in the hotel room, getting this thing ready to go. Auburn, Alabama. He's on the planes for college game day this weekend. How do you feel about being in Auburn?
We're excited. This is 3 years in a row that we're here at Auburn, and we've never done that before except for Duke.
Yeah.
It's the only one that's done 3 years in a row, so it speaks very highly. If anybody thinks there's any honor associated with college game day somewhere, I guess it speaks to how successful Auburn has been under Bruce Pearl. It's just a great program.
Yeah, college game day and college basketball is rolling rampant right now. And there's some top freshmen out there that are really doing their thing. You got the Brandon Millers, the Grady Dicks, the Keontae Georges out there. And most likely those guys are going to be one-and-done players. What is your thought on one-and-dones?
Well, obviously, I'm a lot older than you, so I remember a time when it wasn't that way. But it wasn't this way because there wasn't the money that enticed players to come out early. I think with any accomplished person that has an opportunity at a genius level to earn money in the marketplace, you don't want to stand in the way of that, especially for an athlete where there's just a finite amount of time that you can physically perform. I mean, if you're a doctor, a lawyer, or business person, you could add years on to the end of your career if you just want to work longer. An athlete can't do that. So if they can add years to their career on the front end of their productive earning years, it's important for them. And some players make mistakes and maybe go too early. I think the main thing is just while they're in school, you want them to take steps toward completion of their education, and hopefully they can go back. But I'm one of those that feels like 1 year of education is far better than none, and 2 years better than one, and so on. But I think once athletes are in college and they have a relationship with an institution of higher learning, they're much more likely to come back, and they develop these meaningful relationships that will help them come back in the future and complete their education and really continue it from there.
That's what I was going to talk about, like the guys that go to the draft in those one-and-done situations that may not get drafted. I feel like the NCAA should let them go back. They talk about the agents, and if you sign with the agent, you can't come back to the institution. And I feel like if education is going to be the most important part, they should allow them to come back, especially with NIL now. If you have NIL you can sign with an agent. So why is there a difference between signing with an agent to get drafted?
Yeah, that's a good point. There shouldn't be. These bright lines of demarcation that have always been in place have really been meaningless. It was always about money, as if somehow money, the acceptance of money means that you're no longer qualified to be an athlete and student at the same time. And of course, that's nonsensical. You don't want to have a situation, immediately everybody goes to the extreme when you bring up a reasonable point like you did, where somebody doesn't get drafted. To me, every player should have a window of time that they can play in college. It can be age-related, whatever. But what somebody will say, well, what, you want a player to be able to come back when they're 40 years old? Nobody's going to do that. Come on, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
But if you do have a time window for a player to be able to come back, I think it serves the player well to be in college, and the institution gains by having a mature, better player that can come back into the system. It's not just the athlete that benefits from college. Colleges benefit from these athletes, and they benefit monetarily, certainly financially, but they benefit in other ways too.
So we talked about the one-and-done players. You weren't one of those. You were a 4-year starter.
Wasn't good enough.
You're a 4-year starter at Duke, so you're good enough to start at Duke all 4 years. Talk about that experience being under Coach K's leadership. That's a prestigious program, blue blood, and you going there out of high school. Just talk about that experience for you as a college athlete being under Coach K for those 4 years.
It was great. When I was younger, basketball was the most important thing to me. It's pretty much the most important thing to me now outside of my family. But, when I was coming out of high school, I was thinking about the basketball part of it. And being with Coach K, he did so much more for me than just basketball. I don't think I would have gone to law school if it weren't for Coach K. I don't think I would have ultimately chosen the broadcast field if it weren't for Coach K. A lot of the things that he helped me with helped set me up to do things that I would do later on and really make my life. So I owe him a great deal, and it's not the basketball is further down the list of things that he did for me and taught me and things like that. So the relationship, it's like any great teacher or mentor, and I've had a lot of them, but he's at the top of the list. I wouldn't be the same person without him.
Mm-hmm. That's real right there. It's kind of crazy how you talk about that player-coach relationship and just how much farther down the line basketball is in that relationship part itself. I actually had to call my high school coach, Coach Chris Latch, who's a big fan of you, actually. And talking to him, he wanted to know from the perspective of when you were in college, there was no NIL. But you're a big advocate for NIL. How do you feel like it has made the game itself better or worse? Because you see Coach Jim Boeheim, he just like blasted saying, some ACC schools are buying their teams. Do you think it's made the game better or worse?
I think, well, first, I think Jim was out of line with what he said, and he came out and apologized. He has no clue whether a team is paying for players or not. That was an absurd statement that he made, and I think he realizes that. I think it's made the game significantly better. The NCAA has always said that athletes are students to be treated like any other student, and they're just students who happen to be athletes. Well, if that's true, then athletes don't have near the rights that any non-athlete student has. A non-athlete student here at Auburn can be on full scholarship and write a book that's a bestseller and make $1 million, and they'd be celebrated for it. It wouldn't affect their status as a student. They still have to turn their papers in on time and do the same things everybody else has to do.
I got to work Tuesdays a weekend, actually.
Exactly. And same thing for a student at Stanford that writes some code that they can sell to Google or something. They can or start their own company. They can do all kinds of things. And the fact that not every student does that and monetizes their ability level while they're in college doesn't mean that nobody should be allowed to do it. So it's helping retain players longer. We've seen both football and basketball players that might have left to go pro come back to school. That benefits the school. I think it benefits the athlete, but it certainly benefits the school. And to me, it's all good. It's just for so many coaches and administrators that are older. And I don't mean to be dismissive of it, but there's a sort of old person get off my lawn thing. Mentality. Like their jobs are different now. Well, I'm sorry, your jobs are different, but the players deserve it. And they actually deserve more. They deserve their full economic value and at least a bargain for it, in my view. But it's exactly what people like me thought would happen has happened. The world is still on its axis. All the games are being played. The players are still going to school. They're still great teammates. They still work hard in practice every time.
Yes, sir.
Nobody's leaving practice to go to a photo shoot or shoot a commercial. None of that stuff happens. Their relationships are still great. And all the games have been played on time and all the checks have cleared and the value of college sports keeps going up like it has for the last 50 years.
College sports has really grown in such a way. And we talked about the Title IX that's been recently coming up, just seeing the growth, especially on the women's sports aspect and just the collective as a whole. But I really like to use the comparison between your time and my time as a college athlete. And the big question that I have, and really I want your insight because, you played, you were at a high level, a lot of athletes competing at a high level. When you played, the mental health aspect was not preached as much. It was, back then you could get cussed out by the coach. It was kind of like a normal thing, just kind of like go about your business. Nowadays, it's not going to happen without some type of reparations. And you see the mental health aspect of it, giving more resources to the athlete. How was it for you back then on balancing that mental health battle as a collegiate athlete?
I don't remember the term, honestly, Justin, mental health being used when I was a player. And I think you're right that the way players were treated was different back then. The world is harder to navigate now for all of you than it was for us back then. We had it easier. And there's just more coming at you. Social media, the internet, all these things where a thought that was had by a fan that was said in a barber shop or by the water cooler or even in the newspaper, it went away pretty quickly, and you didn't see it. So now you're bombarded by someone's crazy thought on the fringe, and it makes it more difficult. And I actually got a phone call from a colleague the other night that had done a game and got a lot of criticism, and this is an adult. And we talked about it, so you can't listen to that. It doesn't mean anything. But when it's coming at you in the moment, it's difficult to deal with. So to me, the one of the best things about now, one of the worst things is that more young people are going through difficulties on the mental health side. At least it seems so. But the positive is there's a greater awareness about it, and vulnerability and seeking help, however much or little one needs, is not seen as weakness now. It's seen as strength, because it is strength.
Yes, sir.
And when I was a kid in college, and to a point afterwards, there was some thought that admitting that you needed some help or counseling or
make you soft.
Some guy, somehow you were weak, and it's the exact opposite. I use the thing, like I was really stupid in college. I had a knee injury, and I thought that I was supposed to tough it out, and I was having a significant amount of pain, and I basically kept it to myself for a while. Some of the issues that I was having, which is the exact wrong thing to do. Like I should have been telling the trainer and the doctors this is a problem, and I wasn't aware enough or mature enough to know that I should have spoken up more. I mean, they knew I had an injury, but they didn't know how much pain it was causing me and the difficulty of it. It turned out it was a significant issue. And I learned from that when you have something, say something. It doesn't do you any good to tough things. That's not what toughness is. And so I think the fact that your generation is much more aware, it's made my generation more aware, and that's only a positive. And I hope it continues to get better, and we continue to throw resources into it because it's important.
Yeah, that's real right there. I appreciate you sharing that. Last thing, because I know you got to go. Talk about changing that stigma and how far we've come. We're going to look at the women's sports aspect. We just had Coach Staley here, Aaliyah Boston and them. They're going against LSU and Kim Mulkey on Sunday, and the girls are rolling right now. They're balling out there. But you only hear about, girls need more push. They need more, shine light on them. But you really mostly hear that from the women's perspective. From the male perspective, how do you feel like girls basketball, girls sports in general, women's sports in general can get more traction and get the same respect as the male sports?
I think women's sports needs more coverage. And we need to put our money where our mouths are with regard to that coverage.
Yes, sir.
As you know, women's sports in many ways is still in its infancy. That when I was in school, there was no Title IX. There were no women's sports was not even second class. It was third class, and was treated as such. And I can tell you that whether it was a lack of maturity or just growing up in that environment, I was one of those that didn't pay attention when I should have, wasn't as aware of the fact that we weren't shining the appropriate light on it. And because that's the way it had always been. And I do think this is true. I think that when, as a man and in a men's sport, or men's sports in general, when you were the top dog, you didn't care about anything else as much as what you were getting, and somehow we deserved it. These women are phenomenal athletes, but the race we as men have had in a 100-yard dash, we've had a 75-yard head start.
Yep.
And if I just marvel at how so many of the women I admire, whether it's Dawn Staley or Tara Vanderveer at Stanford or Kara Lawson at Duke, they are passionate advocates. But I'm not sure if I weren't them, I'd want to bang a door down and challenge somebody to fight over it. But I think the way that women's sports now, when you watch softball or you watch track and field, volleyball, women's basketball. They're remarkable competitions. And all you have to look, women's basketball, the NCAA tournament is growing like crazy. Softball's growing like crazy. It's magnificent to watch. And I think, just from my perspective as a consumer of all these sports, and I used to call WNBA games. I did some women's basketball back in 2000 for NCAA and women's basketball. When you devote some time to dig into it, it's awesome. I mean, it is absolutely awesome. And I am in awe of players like Sue Bird and Katie Lou Samuelson, you name it, all these, Leah Boston, all these great players. And they not only talk about deserve what they're getting, they deserve way more. And really, it's not about them doing more it's about us paying attention to it. And their question should be, why are you not doing more? And we should be. It's not enough to just go, wear a WNBA hoodie around and tweet about it. I would like to see, I'm not part of the NBA, but I would like to see the NBA Players Association and the NBA itself start devoting some resources to it instead of just, of talking about it. And that goes for college sports too. I mean, Title IX is a tremendous vehicle, but not everybody's in compliance with it. And I think all these schools, there's so much, well, we need to do more. Well, then do more. Yeah. Like, how long do we need to hear people say, well, we need to do more, as if that's the end of the discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate that insight. That's the same thing I've been saying, but you really want to drive it home. And like you say, you need to put your money where your mouth is and really get out there in that field.
Well, Justin, it's like everything else in our society. There's as you know better than anybody, there's inequality in our society. And when people talk about, well, we need to take steps to get there, when? Yeah. Why can't we have equality now? And that's so for your parents, for my parents, my grandparents, all that, if they're asking that question, like my mother is in her 80s, she's lived her whole life waiting for equality. And how long? I mean, I'm sure her question would be, well, how much longer? How much longer do they have to wait? Does Dawn Staley have to be in her 80s before we're there? When is this going to happen? And I think those are important questions that we as men need to answer, because we can't just lay it at the feet of female athletes and administrators and say, well, you guys do it, and we're happy to support you, and we'll be there. That's not. I just don't think that's good enough.
Yeah, we got to change the narrative right now. Appreciate that. Well, this is the end of the episode of the Stuck in My Thoughts podcast. Make sure you go ahead and like, comment, subscribe to this video, and catch us on all platforms. Mr. Bilas, I appreciate you being on.
This guy's going to be replacing me in no time. My time is limited, I can tell.
Hey, I'm going to see you soon. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.